My younger brother stalked my wife for years, but when I discovered my mother was his accomplice, the betrayal destroyed me, and now they're both paying a price they never saw coming. I'm 30 years old. I work as a software developer, and honestly, I need to get this story off my chest because I still wake up at night thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't come home 5 minutes earlier that night. My wife Alexis and I have been married for almost 4 years now, and what my younger brother did to her, what my own mother helped make possible, basically destroyed any concept I had of family. I guess I should start from the beginning, when things still seemed normal, or at least what I thought was normal at the time. I met Alexis like 5 years ago at a coffee shop near my work. One of those situations where we both reached for the last croissant at the same time and ended up sharing a table because the place was packed. She is, an art teacher at a high school. She's 29 now, and from the beginning there was something about her that caught me. I don't know. A kind of warmth mixed with this quiet strength she has. She told me she lost her parents in a car accident when she was 20, and that basically she didn't have close family, just some distant cousins she didn't talk to much. At that moment I thought, well, at least she'll have my family, right? Ha, how wrong I was. We got married after 9 months of dating, which I know sounds fast, but when you know what I mean? My family seemed happy for us. My mom, Dorothy, organized a welcome dinner for Alexis. My older sister, Elizabeth, adored her from the first moment, and my brother, Mason, well, he was 26 back then and seemed happy for me. My dad had died like 3 years before that, pancreatic cancer, and I think we were all still processing that loss. But the wedding was a happy moment, or so I thought. Here's the thing. Alexis was the one who suggested we move close to my family. She said, "You're lucky to have a family that loves you. I don't want you to move away from them because of me." So we found an apartment like 20 minutes from the house, where I grew up, where my mom still lived and where Mason was still living too because, well, my mom never really pushed him to become independent. He worked in car sales, made decent money, I guess. But he was still in his childhood bedroom at 26. My sister Elizabeth had been living on her own for years, was married, had her life together, but Mason was always the baby of the family, the spoiled one. The first few months everything seemed fine, like normal. We'd go to dinner at my mom's house on Sundays. Mason would come visit us sometimes, bring beer or pizzas, typical brother stuff. But then I started noticing he was coming a lot, like 2 or 3 times a week, always with some excuse, that he needed advice about something, that he was passing through the area, that he brought us this or that. And he always brought gifts, not for both of us, just for Alexis. One day it was flowers, another day expensive chocolates, art books she'd mentioned wanting to read. I thought, well, he's trying to be a good brother-in-law, right? He wants Alexis to feel part of the family. Then came his 27th birthday, and my mom organized a dinner at her house. We were all there, Elizabeth with her husband, some uncles, Mason's friends, the whole thing. And in the middle of dinner, when we were toasting him, Mason stands up with his wine glass and says, I'm very lucky in my life, but sometimes I wonder how things would have been if I had met Alexis first. She would have been perfect for me, but my brother got to her first." And he laughed, like it was a joke, but the table went silent, like that awkward silence where nobody knows whether to laugh or not. I laughed nervously and said something like, "Well, tough luck, brother," and we changed the subject, but Alexis squeezed my hand under the table hard, and I could feel she was tense. That night, when we got home, Alexis stayed quiet for a while. I asked her if she was okay, and she said, "I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to get mad." I sat down with her on the couch, and she basically laid it all out. That Mason had been acting weird with her for weeks, that he stood too close when they talked, that he made comments about her clothes or her perfume, that once he tried to hold her hand when I went to the bathroom at a restaurant, that he sent her text messages asking personal things about her day. She said, "I didn't want to tell you anything, because I thought maybe I was exaggerating, that maybe it's just his way of being friendly. But after what he said today at dinner, I can't ignore it anymore." I was furious, like that fury you feel in your chest that makes you want to break something. My own brother, my younger brother, who I basically helped raise after my dad died, was harassing my wife. The next day, I went directly to find him, found him at the dealership where he worked, and told him, "We need to talk now." We went to his car and I told him everything. That Alexis had told me about his behavior, that the dinner thing had been completely inappropriate, that he needed to stop immediately, and he laughed. Ben, he literally laughed in my face and said, "Really? Alexis told you that? I was just being nice to your wife, trying to make her feel welcome in the family. You're paranoid, brother. Maybe the problem is you don't trust your marriage." I left there feeling crazy, you know? Like maybe I was the one who was exaggerating. But Alexis showed me the messages. And yeah, they were weird, like things like, "You looked beautiful today," or "I can't stop thinking about that conversation we had," or "I'd love to get to know you better without Ben around so we can really talk." Nothing explicitly sexual, but definitely inappropriate. I confronted my mom too, and she basically defended Mason, said I was being too sensitive, that Mason just wanted to get along with Alexis, that spouses' brothers are always close, and I was making a problem out of nothing. The thing is that after that confrontation, Mason stopped visiting us. I mean, completely. Like 2 months went by without seeing him, and I thought, well, maybe he got the message. But then I received an incredible job offer in Kansas City, Missouri, like 6 hours away from where we were living. It was more money, better position, growth opportunities, everything I'd been looking for. I talked to Alexis and she said, "Let's take it, let's get out of here." She didn't say why exactly, but I knew part of her wanted to get away from Mason, from that whole uncomfortable situation. So I accepted the job. We found a nice house in Kansas City. And here's the important thing, we didn't tell Mason or my mom we were leaving until a week before the move. We told Elizabeth because she is, the only one we really trusted, and she helped us with the move. We only told my mom it was for work, that it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. But we didn't give her our exact new address, just the city. We thought that would be enough, that we'd finally have peace, that we could start over away from all that family tension. We moved in March, like 2.5 years ago, and the first few months were amazing. Alexis got a job at a high school there. I was happy in my new position. We had a house with a small yard where she could do her art projects. It was perfect. And then, like 3 months after we moved, I'm coming home from work on a normal Thursday, and I see Mason standing at our front door with a bouquet of roses. I froze in the car, literally couldn't believe what I was seeing. I got out and said, "What the hell are you doing here? How did you get this address?" And he smiled, that smile that now gives me chills just remembering it, and said, "Come on, Ben, I'm your brother. Of course I was going to find out where you live. I just wanted to see how you're settling in. Bring Alexis flowers for your new home." I told him to leave, that he wasn't welcome, that if he didn't leave, I'd call the police. He left, but he left the flowers on the porch, and when Alexis got home and saw them, she went pale, like really scared. I called Elizabeth that night, furious, asking her if she had given him our address, but she swore she didn't, that she would never do that. And then, like 2 weeks later, Elizabeth called me crying, saying she needed to tell me something. Apparently, Mason had been at her house looking for something, and she found in his car a folder with photos of Alexis, like hundreds of photos. Photos of Alexis leaving our old house, shopping at the supermarket, walking through the park, and worst of all, photos of Alexis through the windows of our new house. Elizabeth also found voice recordings. Like Mason had been recording Alexis when she talked, he had entire conversations saved on his phone. Elizabeth said she confronted Mason, and he told her he was in love with Alexis, that he'd been in love since the moment I brought her home, that I didn't deserve her, that he could make her happier. Elizabeth was the one who told us that Mason had stolen our address from my mom's phone when she wrote it down after I sent it to her by message. I mean, my mom had our address, and basically, Mason found it and copied it without her knowing. At least that's what Elizabeth thought at the time. We filed a police report, showed them the photos Elizabeth had taken of Mason's folder, told them about the previous harassment, but the officer told us they couldn't do much because technically, Mason hadn't threatened Alexis directly, that we needed evidence of repeated contact or explicit threats for a restraining order. Then things got really bad. Like a week later, Alexis went out to buy art supplies at a downtown store, and when she came back, she told me she was sure someone had followed her from the store to our house. She had taken several extra turns, changed routes, but the car was still there. She couldn't see who was driving because of the tinted windows, but she had that horrible feeling in her stomach. We installed security cameras around the house that same day. I changed all the locks to more secure ones, and I told Alexis not to go out alone if she could avoid it. But Alexis has this routine, you know? She's always liked going to a park near our house at 7 in the morning, takes her sketchbook and sketches for like an hour before going to work. She says it's her moment of peace, her time to clear her mind. And one morning, she was at the park, sitting on her favorite bench near the lake, when she looks up and there's Mason, standing like 20 meters away, just watching her. She called me immediately, her voice shaking, and I ran to the park, but by the time I got there, Mason was already gone. Alexis didn't want to go back to the park after that. She stopped doing her morning sketches, started having nightmares, was scared to be alone in the house. We filed another police report, this time with more evidence, the security camera. Recordings showed Mason lurking around our house at like 2 in the morning on several occasions. Finally, they gave us a temporary restraining order, but everyone knew that was just a piece of paper, that if Mason really wanted to get close to Alexis, a piece of paper wasn't going to stop him. I started working from home most days. Didn't want to leave Alexis alone for a second. She stopped going out except to go to work, and I drove her and picked her up every day. Our life became this prison of fear, and all because of my brother, because of my own family, and then the worst thing happened. It was a Tuesday. I remember the day exactly because it was Alexis's birthday. She had just turned 29. I had planned a surprise dinner, had gone out to pick up her favorite cake from a bakery on the other side of town, which I normally wouldn't do. Normally I wouldn't leave her alone, but I thought, it's just an hour, the cameras are active, the doors are locked, she'll be fine. I came back home, at like 9 at night, walked in through the front door, and everything was dark. I called out for Alexis, but she didn't answer, and I felt that panic in my chest, that feeling that something is terribly wrong. I ran upstairs to our bedroom, and when I opened the door, I saw Alexis lying in bed, apparently asleep, but there was a figure sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her hand. It was Mason. He had a duffel bag next to him, and when I turned on the light, he looked at me with this completely calm expression, like what he was doing was the most normal thing in the world. Alexis woke up, or rather, started waking up, because when I looked at her closely, I realized she was drugged. Her eyes were glassy and she couldn't focus well. I didn't think. I just acted. I threw myself at Mason and knocked him to the floor, yelling at Alexis to call the police. Mason tried to fight, but I was operating on pure adrenaline and fear. I held him against the floor until I heard the sirens. While we waited for the police, I looked inside his duffel bag, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Duct tape, zip ties, a bottle of chloroform, and a box with an engagement ring. My brother had entered my house, had drugged my wife, and was planning to take her, literally kidnap her. The police arrived, arrested Mason immediately. Alexis went to the hospital. They did blood tests and confirmed she had benzodiazepines in her system, probably Rohypnol or something similar that Mason had put in her afternoon tea, because we found the cup still on the nightstand. The investigators found that Mason had entered through a basement window we didn't know was broken. He had forced it weeks before, probably, and was waiting for the perfect moment. The trial was a complete nightmare. Mason hired a lawyer who tried to say my brother was mentally ill, that he needed help, not prison. But the evidence was too clear. The photos, the recordings, the fact that he broke into our house and drugged Alexis, the duffel bag with kidnapping tools. In the end, Mason pleaded guilty to stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted kidnapping. They gave him 4 years in prison, which honestly seemed little to me considering what he tried to do, but his lawyer negotiated well. When the judge handed down the sentence, Mason looked at me and said, "This isn't over until I say it's over." Those were his exact words. But here comes the part that really destroyed me. During the investigation, the police checked Mason's phone and found messages with my mom, Dorothy. She had been giving him information about us, telling him when we were going to be out, sending him updates about Alexis's routine that I had casually mentioned in phone conversations. My mom was basically helping Mason harass us, stalk my wife. When we confronted her, she cried and said she just wanted her children to be close, that she didn't think Mason was really going to do something bad, that she thought Mason just needed time to process his feelings and that eventually he'd get over his crush. The investigation also revealed that Mason had stalked other women before, that my mom had quietly paid off 2 different women in the past not to press charges against him. One of them was a coworker. Mason had been chasing for months, following her home, sending her unwanted gifts. The other was a girl who rejected going out with him on a dating app and ended up with Mason showing up at her apartment repeatedly. My mom had given them money, begged them not to ruin her son's life, and they accepted because they wanted the situation to end. My mom faced charges too, as an accomplice to stalking, and received 3 years probation plus community service. She lost her job as a secretary at an elementary school when all this came to light. Elizabeth cut contact with her completely. I did too. My sister testified at the trial against Mason, and my mom told everything she knew, the photos she had found, the strange conversations she'd had with Mason where he talked about Alexis obsessively. Elizabeth was the only one who really supported us, the only one who saw how twisted all this was. Alexis was in therapy for over a year after all this. She had panic attacks, couldn't sleep alone in a room, had nightmares where Mason was chasing her. She lost weight because she couldn't eat, stopped making art for months because she couldn't concentrate. Seeing my wife, this strong and talented woman who had survived losing her parents and building a life from scratch, so broken by what my family did to her, was the hardest thing I've had to witness. I was in therapy too, carrying the guilt of having brought Alexis close to my family, of not having seen the signs earlier, of leaving her alone that night. We moved to another house across Kansas City like 6 months after the trial. We couldn't keep living in that place where Mason had entered, where he had touched Alexis while she was unconscious. The new house has a better security system, cameras everywhere, sensors on all windows and doors. Alexis cut the long hair. Mason used to say he loved, dyed it a different color, completely changed her clothing style. She says she needed to feel like a different person, someone Mason wouldn't recognize if he ever saw her again. Even though technically he has a permanent restraining order and can't come near us when he gets out of prison. Elizabeth is still in our lives. She's the only family I really have left. She comes to visit us every couple of months, always brings wine and desserts, and tries to make things feel normal, or as normal as possible considering everything. My mom tried to contact us several times, sent letters asking for forgiveness, saying she didn't know Mason was so sick that she just wanted to protect her son. I never responded to any of those letters. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her. Honestly, I don't think so. Alexis went back to teaching art like a year ago, and little by little she's going back to drawing, painting, doing the things she loved. She still has bad days where she doesn't want to leave the house, where she compulsively checks the security cameras, but they're less frequent now. I work completely remote. Never went back to the office after all this. My boss understood the situation and let me stay home permanently. It means I can be here with Alexis, that she never has to be really alone if she doesn't want to. Mason gets out of prison next year. In August, I think. Or maybe September. I'm not sure of the exact details because I try not to think about it. We have the restraining orders. We have a lawyer who assured us that if Mason tries to contact us in any way, he goes straight back to prison. But I'm still scared. I'm scared that my brother, this man who shared my childhood, my home, my life, is out there free, still thinking about my wife, planning who knows what. Elizabeth says. Mason still doesn't accept that he did anything wrong. That in prison he tells people that Alexis was his soulmate and that I stole her from him. That terrifies me more than anything else. That after all this, after prison and mandatory therapy, he still believes his twisted version of reality. Last week, Alexis and I were cooking together, something we do almost every night now. This routine that helps us feel normal. We were making pasta, nothing special, just spaghetti with marinara sauce, and suddenly she hugged me from behind and said, "Thank you for never doubting me, for believing me from the beginning." And that broke my heart because that should be the norm, you know? Believing your wife when she tells you someone is making her feel uncomfortable. But I know many people don't have that. And I'm glad that, at least in that, I didn't fail. I failed at keeping her safe from my own family, but I believed her when she told me something was wrong. It's the bare minimum, I guess. But for her, it meant everything. I don't know how this story really ends. Mason is still out there. Eventually, he's going to get out, and we're going to have to live with that. My mom keeps sending letters that I throw away without opening. Alexis still has nightmares some nights. But we've also built something new here. A life that's just ours, away from the toxicity and horror of what happened. We have new friends who don't know the whole story, who just see a normal couple trying to live their life. We're thinking about adopting a dog, something big that can be protection but also company for Alexis. Small steps forward, you know? Sometimes I wonder if I could have prevented all this, if I had seen the signs earlier, if I had cut contact with Mason after that comment at his birthday, if I had never brought Alexis close to my family in the first place. But my therapist tells me none of this is my fault, that Mason made his own choices, that my mom chose to be an accomplice. And yeah, intellectually I understand it, but emotionally it's more complicated. That's the family that raised me, the people who are supposed to love me, and they betrayed me in the worst possible way. They helped traumatize the person I love most in the world. I don't know if I'll ever fully process that.